In an examination and reflection of one's own teaching practice, especially with the use of video recording, it is helpful to move into the reflection with a growth mindset. That is, a mindset ready to iterate your practice to allow it to become more impactful and successful for the student. In this reflection and analysis of a science lesson using the principles of teaching proficiency, reflection guide, a single simulated third grader in a simulated classroom with a lesson that is new was used. While this environment is not ideal, it is still helpful in shaping and evolving one's teaching practice. There are three fundamental principles being examined in this analysis of a transfer of energy at the third grade level, and these principles address engaging the prior understandings of the student. These prior understandings shape significantly how a student makes sense of what they are taught. The factual knowledge being placed in a good conceptual framework for understanding by placing this knowledge in more than one rich representation. And metacognition, or how a student learns to learn. This is both how we learn and how to learn better, whether it's recalling information or simply good practice in establishing a mindset to ready oneself for learning. In my teaching, I always aspire to hit each of these principles at least a little bit when teaching a lesson. However, with new lessons and new environments, this can be challenging. As we step through the phases of this lesson, it becomes apparent I could have addressed the information differently for heightened impact and engagement. Suffice it to say, my simulated third grader was a tough and a very different audience. It is not uncommon for me to iterate a lesson on the fly as it is delivered for the first time. I am also afforded the opportunity to deliver most lessons 3 to 4 times in a single day to different students at the same level. In this instance, I ran through the lesson alone many times, but experience has shown me that being nimble and flexible is paramount to crafting an interesting lesson, and I only had one opportunity with my simulated third grader. Before we start the analysis of the lesson, I should frame the analysis with an understanding that I have delivered many lessons on the transfer of energy and chose to try a new lesson which has very little hands-on exploration done by the student. This is an effort to keep the lesson light and nimble and also due to time constraints. I would have preferred to instruct real third graders in a real classroom. Typically, I would support many student explorations with a variety of materials. For this lesson, I examined the transfer of energy with a third grader. This was a single simulated third grader. The lesson addresses performance expectations at the fourth grade level and addresses specifically three NGSS performance indicators, primarily using evidence to construct an explanation relating to the speed of an object, making observations to provide evidence that energy can be transferred from place to place by sound, light, heat, and electric currents, and asking questions and predicting outcomes about the changes in energy that occur when objects collide. At my school, this instruction begins in the third grade. This lesson uses poker chips to allow the students to develop questions and predict what happens when the chips collide, ultimately giving them insight into how energy can be transferred from one object to another. New understandings of what energy is and how it relates to the world, along with understanding the concept of work, are additional goals. In this first clip, I'm trying to set the stage for the simulated lesson and quickly realize that this simulated student is embracing the role and in fact ready to learn with an open mindset. So appreciated.
Okay, hello class. How is everybody doing today?
Great, Mr. Pearson.
You are my simulated third grader. How do you feel being a simulated third grader?
I feel really good about it.
So today we're going to talk about energy. Can you tell me a little bit about what you know about energy?
I'd like to first explore prior knowledge with the student to suss out and navigate the lesson with the student. This went well.
I don't know a whole lot about energy.
Okay. What do you know?
I use it to plug in things.
Like what?
Like a hairdryer or a cooking stove or...
In this clip, I work hard to not draw conclusions and keep the atmosphere humorous and fun.
Is there anything in particular that you want to learn about energy?
How it works.
How energy works?
Yeah.
It's funny that you use the word work.
It's...
Okay.
After exploring prior knowledge, the student is asked to explore motion with poker chips. This helps in establishing prior knowledge. This exploration was not adequate and could have been better implemented with more people present, as well as more than one conceptual framework. We watched a short video on energy to explain energy. The 5-minute video explores the transfer of energy as well as differentiates potential and kinetic energy. We had a lively host with Bill Nye, the science guy. The video allows the students to explore one example of secondhand inquiry in a lively and engaging setting. This keeps my simulated student engaged. As we moved into the hands-on inquiry,
use some simple stuff, and you are going to explore energy and demonstrate some transfer of energy. What do you think the word transfer means?
Going from one place to another place.
What about a transfer of energy?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me an example of a transfer of energy?
Going from the plug to the refrigerator.
Okay.
as we moved into the hands-on inquiry and exploration with the poker chips, my
Okay,
student became
we're back.
engaged in their learning.
So what we're going to do now is you're going to explore with a partner, I can be your partner, how you can make and show demonstration of motion and energy using these chips. We have 8 poker chips here. So go ahead and see what you can do in terms of making them move. We're just trying to create motion any way you want. Okay. So make note of how you're creating the motion. So you did one thing and then you did another one.
I've always found that giving students a forum to be a scientist and form their own investigations to be highly motivating. I would have liked to have allowed my simulated third grader to do this. I felt that this environment was a little bit contrived. In my teaching practice with this lesson, I have learned that a great deal of insight comes from videotaping the lesson. I noticed several instances of looking away from my simulated student to refer to notes. This is distracting. It is especially distracting when you are trying to reinforce opportunities for the student to get feedback on their learning, if only to highlight their own benefit. In this lesson, I also did not practice one of my cornerstone elements from understanding by design. That is, to focus and frame a transfer goal for the student. While it may only have been the understanding that the student would first transfer this new knowledge to the next lesson, it should also be tied into real life. This makes it more real for the student. Thanks for watching.